What's the cringiest thing you've seen a bride and groom do for their wedding? At a classmate's wedding, they were young, maybe like 22, 23. There is apparently a caking tradition in some parts of the country, where when they cut the wedding cake, the couple feed each other a bit and smear each other's faces with cake as a joke. The bride had absolutely made 1000% clear to the groom she did not want to be caked. He did it anyways, and not just a small smear, but full-on smashed the slice in her face. She was stunned initially, then got up, face full of cake, yelled, "You asshole, I told you not to do that," and then ran to a back area in the reception. The groom tried to follow, but the bridesmaid's mother of the bride stopped him, so he sat at the head table awkwardly while half the wedding party rushed off with the bride. She stayed back there for like an hour. They eventually did let him back there to check on her. We could hear her crying and them arguing. The rest of the reception came to a screeching halt until one of the bride's aunts emerged and directed the servers to clear the tables and put on some music. They got divorced 2 years later. This seems to be a fairly common predictor. If partners aren't on the same page about the cake thing, and the one who thinks it's funny disregards their new spouse's feelings on the matter, it's a bad sign for the longevity of the marriage. Happened at my niece's wedding. Her new husband full-on shoved that cake in her face and she lost it. Almost exactly what you described, except she never got over it. From that point forward for the rest of the night she was in tears, or screaming in rage. The wedding was literally ruined. A lot of people left when it became obvious that it had turned into a big shit show. I spent most of the reception outside smoking pot with various guests young and old, so that was kind of fun. They're still married. The groom gave a speech thanking everyone for coming that devolved in the space of about 2 minutes into a straight-up roast of his new brother-in-law. They were friends, and the brother-in-law seemed to take it in good humor, but there's only so much implication of "I'm for sure going to be fucking your sister tonight" that you can take before it becomes really cringy. It didn't help that I barely knew anyone there because I was a +1, and B, I was on the table with the elderly relatives from that side of the family, who were less than amused. Oh god, you just gave me a flashback to my wedding. My brother-in-law is super awkward and doesn't understand emotional boundaries. He likes to inject himself into other people's emotional moments to sing, always a Ben Folds song, or whatever. Takes videos of people so he can edit a cheesy video together later as a gift, that kind of thing. My husband and I had a small wedding and agreed to no maid of honor best man because it was a pretty non-traditional event. So after we said our vows we joined the crowd for a toast from our officiant, which was fantastic. Until after the toast, Garrett pushed his way up to the front, pulls out a huge notebook, and then proceeds to roast my new husband with weird jokes that no one got. And even my husband had forgotten about or didn't know what he was talking about for the most part. Luckily my sisters encouraged him down and then got up to give an impromptu joint speech inviting everyone to the buffet. The worst part is he made my new father-in-law record it and sent the speech to us afterwards as our gift. I don't think we saved that video. Bride shows up almost 2 hours late to her own wedding. Southern California in an open field, no water, no shade. She shows up and wants to get married in her yoga outfit. The groom shut it down, and when she refused to change her clothes the groom decided to leave her looking stupid and they never got married. Edit. I spoke with my uncle and it turns out he had speculation that his fiancée was sleeping with her personal trainer. When she showed up in her yoga outfit it was all he needed to call off the wedding. She ended up married to her personal trainer and divorced again. They sang their vows to each other. Neither had a singing voice. Vows were generally batshit crazy, like submissive in the bedroom, and not asking about where she was going. The auto-tune microphones were a terrible idea. Their vow song shared a chorus and it was awful, and they expected the guests to sing along with the chorus. The vows singing lasted 20 minutes. Pure cringe. Not the groom and bride's fault, but the pastor marrying them talked about his marriage and his kids for 20 minutes. He was obviously going for something of showing what marriage will be like, but he full up was talking about how his daughter, Kelsey, learned to walk this way, and his other daughter's first words were this and that, and that he and his wife make love throughout the house because that's what you do when in love, etc. Bride and groom had to stand there holding hands for 20 minutes right in front of him as the other 150 of us had to listen about his sex life and his kids. Oh god, you just reminded me of an acquaintance I knew, didn't go to the wedding but heard from a mutual friend who was there, where the pastor marrying them told the couple to divorce their friends under the promise that it would make them a stronger couple or some shit like that, and they followed that advice. So pretty much after the wedding and reception, they just never again talked to any of the friends they had invited to celebrate their big moment. I thought they would be divorced within a year, but turns out that they're still together. But yet, apparently married couples aren't allowed to have friends. When I was in high school, one of my hockey teammates had a kid with his girlfriend when they were juniors. They decided to get married and the wedding was officiated by my teammate's dad, who also happened to be our head coach. The entire wedding was the bride and groom's direct family and the hockey team, at a Golden Corral. Then the reception was at the same Golden Corral. Then we had a hockey game that night. The other team we played that night somehow found out about it and hounded the guy the whole time. They were a bunch of dicks. Now about 7 years later that have a second kid. Dad is an officer in the Air Force. Both of his kids play hockey and he coaches and refs, and him and his wife look very happy, so I'm glad it all worked out for them. Edit. For all of you asking about the game, I honestly don't remember if we won. Hockey season's a long one with a lot of games and it was 7-8 years ago. And as a side note, I really did not mean for this to be a rip on the couple. They're amazing together and doing an awesome job raising their kids in a loving household where they want for nothing. They haven't had the easiest lives, but they're doing the best they can and absolutely killing it. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but I've seen his dad, our old coach, at alumni games, and they're such an awesome family. They're the perfect example of the fact that you don't need a giant, expensive, fanciest wedding to be happy. As long as you have each other, family, and friends, it's a joyous occasion that should be celebrated. Oh, I have too. The bride decided to sing as she walked down the aisle. She was not a particularly talented singer, and she was singing over a Carrie Underwood song so we could all hear the original vocal track. She finished walking about halfway through the song and then stood there and sang the rest of the song at the groom, and all we could do was sit there and watch. Different wedding. They began the wedding with the groom playing an out-of-tune guitar and singing to the bride. They were sitting on chairs in front of everyone, legit 400 people, and the bride was clearly uncomfortable, which made everyone else uncomfortable. That wedding also included a foot washing ceremony, and when the bride put her shoes back on, she tripped on her dress and fell flat on her face. They hadn't done the vows yet and the ceremony stopped for 20 minutes to deal with the nosebleed she gave herself. They bought an apple orchard after leaving the city to live a simpler life, and really doubled down on the apple theme. Apples everywhere, on the tables, in baskets all around the venue, on the podium where they got married, pictures of apples hanging everywhere, small fake trees with apples tossed under them. The dude marrying them had an apple tie on. Apples somehow incorporated into every dish for the reception. The cake was shaped like an apple. It was really fucking bizarre. They sold the orchard a couple years later because they had no idea what they were doing.